Good morning, everybody. We're going to start in a couple of minutes. We're still a couple of minutes before noon here on the East Coast, so we'll be going in just a couple of minutes to give everybody a chance to log on. Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning, depending upon where you are. My name is Roy Hadley, and I am a lawyer here at the law firm of Adams and Reese in Atlanta, but our footprint is all over the Southeastern United States. I'm in the privacy, cybersecurity, and data governance team. That said, this is not going to be a legal analysis today. This is not going to be a technical analysis today. Today's goal is to help you to understand a little bit about what the threats are out there with respect to municipalities, school systems, utilities, those sorts of things, but also to give you some real practical advice on what you should be doing, what you should be thinking about, and we'll take into consideration budget constraints, which are always an issue, let's just say. All that said, thank you for joining us today. Again, this is going to be hopefully helpful for you. A few housekeeping things. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm not going to take live questions only because everybody's situation is different. I am happy to talk to you about your situation, about anything that I said today. Also, we will be sending out the deck to everybody. And also, I'll be sending out some links to some of the resources that I'll talk about today so that you have those resources handy. And hopefully they will be helpful for you. So let's get going. Again, we're talking about hardening your municipality against cyber attacks and just kind of what you need to be doing and what you need to be thinking about. So I'm going to hide my picture. You've seen me now. I may come back on a little bit later to kind of talk through some things. So first up, again, what we're going to talk about is, hardening your municipality or your utility or your governmental agency. Where are we currently? Currently, we have increased attacks and increased incidents of cyber attacks. So what you're talking about is municipalities are targets. Why are you a target? You're a target because the bad actors know that you have budget constraints. They know that you may not have the latest technology. They know that you may not have the an IT department, a dedicated IT department. So they are saying, okay, we can come after you. Ransomware, as you know, has been a big issue with respect to municipalities. The attacks continue to go. They've gotten more insidious. They've started leaking data. Originally, the thought was we were just going to attack you, hold your data for ransom. Now they are starting to leak that data out there to kind of force you a little bit more to get into paying that ransom. And so, the attacks are going to be increasing. They're not going to stop. What are you also going to see? The impacts are going to be greater. Again, just like I mentioned, they're releasing the data out there into the internet. And so kind of forcing you, the cost of this are going to go up. That's just the reality. Whether it's the ransom you pay, whether it's the impact to your systems, whether it's the impact to your operations or the impact to, the services you provide, that's going to be, those costs are going to increase. I mean, just think about it. When you start talking about impacts in Texas, a few weeks back when the utilities were going crazy, shutting down, overused, what if some type of cyber attack had happened there? Could have been even more catastrophic than it already was. The other thing that's going to be a reality where we are right now is that almost everybody on this webinar has a decreased budget. And when I say a decreased budget, the revenues are down because of COVID, whether they're decreased tax revenues, decreased fees, those sorts of things. Those budgets are going to be smaller. And so what you're going to have to do is do more with less. And that's just a reality of where we are currently. Now, what are the bad actors after? What are they going after? They're going after things like your tax information and your records, payment information where people have paid fees or for other services or utilities. They're going after property tax information because that has a lot of personal information. They're going after social security numbers. A lot of municipalities and governmental agencies collect social security numbers because they need those for payment or whatever. They're going after voter records. Again, a lot of personal information, driver's license information, Department of Motor Vehicles, and they're going after money. Whether it is the ransomware or whether it's actually stealing from your coffers, all of these things are happening, and that's what they're going after. They're trying to get that information to either sell it on to other bad actors, or they're trying to force you to pay a ransom. And we're not really going to get into ransomware today, but it's pervasive, it's insidious, and hopefully some of the things that we talk about today will help you to avoid ransomware attacks or at least mitigate those attacks. Again, we look at what is at stake here. Public safety is at stake, police, fire, 911, all of those emergency systems are at stake. Here in Georgia, we had a county that had their 911 system taken down by a ransomware attack. In those sorts of things, you feel compelled to pay. And so, that's a problem. And again, hopefully we can get you to a place where you can mitigate the impact of these sorts of things. Municipal operations, trash, sewer, water delivery, utilities delivery. A lot of municipalities will actually deliver electricity or gas. Those can be impacted by cyber attacks. Your water systems have SCADA systems, as we saw down in Florida with a small municipality a couple of months back. That can be impacted. The chemistry of your water supply can be impacted. All things that can be catastrophic if they go to the wrong place. And we can't forget schools and educational facilities. Those too can be impacted by what we are talking about here. And so we really do have to be mindful of what the impacts of these types of activities can be. Again, other things that can be impacted: hospitals and public health facilities. I know some on this call might operate county clinics, health facilities, which, in these days with COVID can be, very impactful, let's just say, in terms of shot records and COVID and those sorts of things. Voting and elections can be impacted. And we're not going to get into, that huge question about whether there's fraud and all of those sorts of things. But what I will say is that voting systems a lot of times are administered by local officials. I know here in Georgia, for example, the counties administer them. So, those are just things that you have to be thinking of in terms of cyber impacts. And bottom line, your municipal budgets can be impacted by cyber attacks. Whether it's decreased revenues, whether it's monies that you have to spend in the response and recovery efforts, all of those things can be impactful. I know I have dealt with a lot of cyber attacks, municipal ransomware attacks. Probably the one that everybody would know of that's on this call is the city of Atlanta's attack back in 2018. What I will say is that the city did a yeoman's job of coming out of that in their response and recovery efforts. And Mayor Bottoms at the time said, our municipal operations will not be impacted. We will continue to provide services to the city. And one of the proudest moments coming out of that operationally was that the city services did continue that next day and that next week and that next month. And so our goal today is to try to get you to a place where if something happens, first, to prevent something from happening, but secondly, if it does, to help mitigate, let's just say, those impacts on your city, your municipality, your agency, your parish, whatever we're talking about. I love this graphic because we're going to talk about the types of attacks that are happening out there, just to kind of give you, kind of some ammunition to understand what we're talking about. But the sharks are circling. We as municipalities are right in the middle, and the sharks are circling. They smell blood in the water, and our goal is to keep the blood out of the water. But if blood gets in the water, to keep the sharks from coming in on us. So what kind of cyber attacks are municipalities? And I'm just going to say municipalities as a general kind of framework, as opposed to saying, everything. But municipalities, again, includes all of those things we talked about: the school systems, the hospitals, public health facilities, utilities, water systems, emergency services. All of that I'm grouping under the umbrella of municipalities, just so that we can have this conversation and be a little quicker about it. But what types of attacks will you see targeted towards you and your municipality? You're going to see untargeted attacks where people are just randomly throwing things out, hoping that they can find a door in or something. You're going to see targeted attacks, which are specifically looking for certain things. So, for example, earlier we had the SolarWinds attack, and that was, kind of a software that a lot of governmental agencies use and companies, quite frankly. And so then that's a targeted attack to say, hey, look, we're going to go after these vulnerabilities in SolarWinds and make sure that we can get in there. So you're going to see that. You're going to see the standards, malware, which, they get on your computer and put something on a computer, your computer, or one of your employees' computers. in order to capture information or do other nefarious things. Phishing, spear phishing, always big ones where they are trying to get you to click the link. Unfortunately, we see a lot of agencies, a lot of businesses that if they do a kind of a spear phishing test, you'll see, anywhere from 60 to 80% of employees clicking the link. And one thing that we're going to talk about, and kind of where you get the most bang for your buck, are humans. And so, spear phishing and phishing are always going to be problems because of human nature, human curiosity, and sometimes our inability to resist something that just looks tempting to click. Water holing is one that you have to worry about, and that's where they're using websites to try to attract people in. And once you get on that website, they're injecting malicious code into your browsers. Social engineering, kind of going back to phishing, brute force, denial of service, blah, blah, blah. I promised you it wasn't going to be technical, so I'm not really going to go into those, but those are some of the terms that you're going to hear kind of as you walk through cyber attacks and all of those other things. So I just wanted to arm you with those terms as we march forward. So kind of getting to the meat of why we're here today. And what should you be asking? Where are you going to, as an administrator or mayor or council person, or some other person, lawyer, city lawyer, municipal lawyer, where can you get the most bang for your buck in terms of helping your organization to become more cyber secure? What should you be asking? I know you're not an IT person, and this is not designed for IT people, but these are the things you should be asking. First and foremost, what are we doing for cybersecurity training and education? Again, your most bang for your buck, and I'll reiterate this later, is going to be helping your people. Your people are always going to be on the front line of your defense against cyber attacks. And so if there was one thing that I would say, absent just some glaring IT issue, is train your people and continuously train your people. There are a lot of resources online. There are companies that do it all day, every day. But if you're going to spend some money, get your people trained, particularly to resist phishing attacks and those sorts of things. Because if you can get your frontline people, all of your employees, including yourself, to resist the urge to click that link or to be suspicious of things that come that just look out of the ordinary, then that's going to be money well spent. If it's somebody in your finance department or your accounting department or your payments department, getting them trained to be suspicious of links, getting them trained to, if they are sending out wire transfers or ACH payments, to call the person on the other end to confirm the wiring instructions, not email them, but call them, those sorts of things. And that kind of gets us then into the second thing, which is just kind of basic cyber hygiene. Helping all of your employees to understand that they are on the front line and that they're doing the right things. Things such as having complex passwords. You'll be surprised at how many people still have very easy passwords. 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D are still out there. Most equipment, when it comes, if it has the ability to be password protected, comes with a default password, 1, 2, 3, 4, usually. And most people do not change that password. And so little things like that, again, cyber hygiene, getting into the training aspects of it, are going to be instrumental in, kind of providing that front line of defense for your organization. Multi-factor authentication is another place where money is well spent. So, before somebody can log in to a computer remotely, especially, having a code sent to their phone that they then have to put into the computer, those sorts of things, that's going to be money well spent. Encryption, getting your computers encrypted, that's going to be money well spent. Another question you should be asking is, kind of what is our software update policy? You don't have to update the software, you don't have to know how to do it, but just asking that question can lead to a lot of good discussion and a lot of good answers. So for example, if we have Microsoft Windows on our computers, do we have the latest version? Do we get patches and install those patches? You'd be surprised at how often updates and patches are not installed. And usually updates and patches are free. They don't cost anything other than getting them installed. So again, you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck if you are doing that. Another good question is going to be, kind of what is our data backup strategy? One of the ways to really thwart ransomware attacks is to have a backup strategy, have backups of your data such that you can reinstall your data if it is impacted. Another great question, particularly for municipalities and governmental agencies, is how do we manage our vendors and their security? So one of the things that I recommend is just making sure that in your contracts, in your procurement process, that you have a cybersecurity requirement built into the RFP or however you procure services. So that you can understand, or your procurement people can understand, what does your vendor do with respect to cybersecurity. One of the things that we're seeing right now, SolarWinds being a great example, is that the bad actors are going after vendors that provide services to municipalities. Because if I attack you, I've got one victim. But if I attack a vendor that provides software to 1,000 municipalities, I now have 1,001 victims. The 1,000, municipalities plus the vendor. And so they get more bang for the buck attacking vendors now, and they're starting to realize that. So one of the key things for you to ask is, what are our vendors doing, and what in our procurement processes are we doing to understand how our vendors approach cybersecurity? Another good question to ask is, do we have an incident response plan? Most municipalities have incident response plans for things like natural disasters, fire emergencies, police emergencies, mass casualties, all those sorts of things. Municipalities understand what we will do in those sorts of situations. There are checklists, there are all sorts of things. Most municipalities don't have a cyber incident component to those. So what I always recommend is, take your incident response plan that you have and integrate a cyber component into it. You don't have to do a standalone cyber incident response plan. It's a good idea, but you don't have to do it. You can save money by integrating that into your existing response plan. And there are examples out there, obviously we can help, but there are examples out there on the web that you can look to, and some of the resources I'm going to give you a little bit later on will help get that incident response plan in place. But that's going to be a lot. You're going to get bang for the buck there. Why? Because in doing that incident response plan, you're going to be asking questions like the ones I'm giving you today, and you're going to be kind of talking through those. Again, doesn't have to be technical, doesn't have to be IT, but these will be conversations that will be very beneficial for you in terms of mitigating incidents on the front end, or I'm sorry, preventing them, resilience, and then mitigating the impact should something happen and getting you stood back up. Another question that you should ask is, do we have cyber insurance? Do we need cyber insurance? I think it is a good idea to have cyber insurance. One, it helps lessen the financial impact should something happen, but also it helps on the front end because most cyber insurance policies now have gotten more sophisticated. And so they will help you to understand your risk profile and where you might deploy whatever resources you have, if they're limited, to best, kind of lower your overall risk profile. So cyber insurance is always a good idea because it helps you on the front end. Another good question to ask is, what is our security posture around remote working? Because of COVID, most municipalities adopted some form of remote work. And what that means is that now, instead of having one target, your city hall or your county, building, or your public, your waterworks, instead of having that one target, now you have 20, 30, 40, depending upon how many employees you have that are working from home or working remotely. And just understanding what policies you have around that can be very helpful. Some good ideas are going to be making sure that your employees have to log in via VPNs, virtual private networks. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that, but VPN is going to be something that could be very beneficial. Again, going back to that two-factor authentication, that's going to be helpful because in that situation with a remote employee, when they log into the system from their home or wherever they're working from, then they have to get a code to their cellular phone. They have to put that code in order to get onto the network. So again, VPNs are going to be something that is helpful, as is two-factor authentication. But just understanding, kind of what you ought to be thinking about in terms of asking that question on your security posture around remote working is going to be beneficial. There are others out there that you should be asking, but I think those questions will get you the most bang for your buck in terms of spurring the conversations that that you want to be looking at. Now, there's a chat that says a chat question. I said I wasn't going to take them, but I couldn't resist. It said, moving to the cloud makes password and multi-factor authentication essential. And, I would absolutely agree to that. A lot of municipalities are moving to the cloud because of the decreased cost and not having dedicated IT departments. And so that does make multi-factor and VPN and some other things very critical to your enterprise's security. So now, looking to the future, what are we going to see going forward? And again, I'm going to be sharing some resources with you. So, just hang tight. But looking into the crystal ball, what are we going to see? Roy's words of wisdom here. We're going to see more attacks, just inevitable. The bad actors know that they can make money this way. You find very sophisticated adversaries on the other side. Most of them are international, coming from Eastern Europe, Russia, North Korea, Iran. That's not a political statement. That's just a fact statement that, those actors are very sophisticated. This is what they do. This is what they do all day. And so you're going to see more sophisticated attacks, more multifaceted attacks. Again, you now don't usually just see a pure ransomware attack. You see a ransomware attack with data leakage. We're going to start leaking this sensitive data out into the internet unless you pay the ransom. as we talked about earlier, you're going to see increased costs in terms of defending these things and in terms of the impact. But again, hopefully we can get to a place, even on limited budgets, that we can, kind of lower that impact and then so lower the cost. We're not going to see a national strategy, comprehensive national strategy on cyber this year. If you had asked me this time last year, I would have said we probably would, but COVID has kind of rearranged the priorities, let's just say, of the federal government. That said, I do think that you're going to see more federal help once kind of COVID and the expenses around responding to the COVID crisis slows down and settles down a little bit. The federal government realizes that cybersecurity, especially for municipalities and governmental agencies, is of high concern. They realize it, and I think once again COVID kind of settles down, we will, kind of see some relief in terms of funding coming to state and local governments. But until then, we're on our own, and so we have to again prioritize what we can do with the decreased budgets that we have because of COVID and other priorities. Okay, so areas to focus on. Again, where are you going to get the most bang for your mental buck? Cybersecurity education and training is going to be kind of, if I had to choose one, and again, this is just a personal opinion, it's not any kind of legal advice or anything or technical advice, training and education for your employees is going to be key, because that's your front line, as we talked about. Helping to create a kind of culture of cybersecurity and cybersecurity hygiene is going to be key. That kind of ties into the education and training, keeping people aware of what's going on, keeping people aware of how they can help your municipality, your agency to be secure. Helping them understand that they're on the front lines of these sorts of things is going to be key. Data security and backup strategies. Again, if your data is held hostage, or if it's changed, being able to restore it quickly is going to be key in terms of making sure that you can provide your services, that you can educate the kids, that you can provide the utilities, the waste pickup, the trash, the water, that you can just run your government. You can collect your fees and your permitting fees and all that sort of thing. Having that data backup is going to give you a lot of bang for the buck. And again, using the cloud can help with that, because then it's automatic. It's no panacea. You still need that hygiene at your organization. And you need to make sure that the vendor that you're choosing for your cloud backup, kind of going back to that vendor management, has a cybersecurity strategy, protocol, and that they have a good backup strategy. So again, that's going to be a question to ask, which then goes down to that fourth point, vendor management, and making sure that they are doing what they need to do. Incident response planning. What will happen and what are you going to do should something happen? If something happens, then you need to have a response plan in place and making sure that you can do the things that you need to do. And lastly, on here, in terms of bang for your mental buck, cyber insurance. Cyber insurance can help mitigate the cost if something happens, and also on the front end, help you to understand what you're doing. The one thing I will say about cyber insurance, some states, and this is something depending upon where you are, through municipal associations or other organizations, have risk pools where you can obtain basic cyber insurance, for a discounted rate. They also have risk pools where they can provide other services for you in terms of cyber preparedness at discounted rates or sometimes for free. So that's something that you really should look at with respect to cyber insurance. So with that, we're going to now talk about additional resources that are available to you that are of low cost or free sometimes. And so those resources a lot of times come from the federal government, not necessarily all the time. The first one, Department of Homeland Security has the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, which comes out of the Center for Internet Security, also affectionately known as CIS. No cost to be a member, but is a great resource for state and local governments, regarding cyber threat prevention and recovery should something happen. So that's one that I would definitely recommend. It's got some really good points in terms of information sharing, but also some good resources for you in terms of lists and documents and things like that. So again, that's CIS, but you'll see it in the deck that we send out to you. The next one is going to be the CIS. That's just the link for it. The next one is going to be CISA, which is coming out of the Department of Homeland Security's, well, it's actually called the Department of Homeland Security Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And CISA, in short, has some really good resources for state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. They include lists, best practices. They also have toolkits that will help you address risk and identity, those sorts of things. So CISA is going to be a great option for you. It's free, it's provided by the federal government. The next one is going to be NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have what they call a voluntary cybersecurity framework. That's a real kind of technical sounding name for. They have some documents that can help you checklist, kind of things that you ought to be thinking about in helping to make your, agency, governmental agency, municipality more secure. Again, what I would tell you is when you look at these things, don't think that it has to be all or nothing, right? The goal should be to get incrementally better. A little bit better is better than not a little bit better at all, right? That almost sounds like a Dr. Seuss kind of thing. But, the goal is incremental, advancement. And so what I would say to you is, as you look at these things, don't get overwhelmed. Don't think I have to do all of this or I'm not in a good place. You could do some of the things, again, like some of the things we talked about today, training, education. Just putting those in place are going to be tremendously helpful to you in terms of getting your municipality or your governmental agency or your school system to a better place. So again, NIST is going to be kind of a good place for you to be. The next additional resources here, and again, those were kind of federal resources. Some of the places that you can, kind of look to are going to be things like, state insurance risk pools. Those are going to be really good places for you to be. Those risk pools for insurance help you on the back end in terms of cost, but they also help you on the front end in terms of helping you to put in place things that are going to lower your overall risk profile. Depending upon what state you're in, the National Guard sometimes have been tasked with helping and leading on cybersecurity. I know that's the case in Louisiana. They will have resources that they can help your municipality get to a better place in terms of cybersecurity. Obviously, if you have cyber insurance, your insurance carrier can help you, get to a better place. They sometimes have resources where they'll come in and do an assessment and tell you where you might be vulnerable. And oftentimes those are free or at a small cost. So, you know, those are very well worth the efforts. Again, you've got some other federal resources, the FBI, Secret Service, Department of Justice can be helpful. You know, one thing that I always recommend is finding out who your field agent is with the FBI and the Secret Service with respect to cyber. There's one for everybody in the country. Who is your field agent? Talk to them, get to know them before something happens, you know, because that's going to be key for you in terms of if something happens, mitigating it and getting stood back up, but also they can help you to get to these other resources that I've mentioned today, and help you to answer the questions that we talked about. And lastly, you know, governmental associations. I know there are a lot of, in most states, there are associations, you know, the municipal or cities, you know, conference or association. Most times they also have resources with respect to cybersecurity because they understand that the threat is real and how vulnerable the populations are with respect to cybersecurity. So, you know, they will have a lot of resources, you know, also that can be of note to you. So with that, again, you know, because of time and just making sure that, you know, you get out of here in the 45 minutes that we said. I'm not going to take questions, but if you do have a question, please feel free to email me and I will show you my email address and all of that. It'll be in the slide deck and I'm happy to answer questions. Because again, your question is going to really be specific to you. And so feel free to email me. You'll get the deck. I'll send you some additional resources. Thank you for joining today. Again, if you're talking about bang for your buck, training, education, you know, and asking those questions are going to get you where you need to be. So with that, I'm going to get everybody out about 5 minutes early. Give you 5 minutes to, you know, enjoy lunch a little bit more or get ready for lunch. Again, I'm Roy Hadley. Thank you so much for joining today. And I do sincerely hope that this has been helpful for you. Thank you. Take care and be safe.